I'm Amy, and welcome to Wired for Change. Today, we are going to be diving into a topic that I am very excited about. It's going to be deep into the human side of change. We've talked about a lot of topics so far on Wired for Change, including cybersecurity, compliance, privacy, AI, all kinds of things that are changing in the environment and affecting the organizations that we live and work in. But for every episode, we've talked a little bit also about the human side of change because there's no escaping it. It's so important. So, this time I'm bringing to you an episode that is really completely focused on the human side of change with an expert who has seen it all. Jennifer Selby Long is here with us today, and she is going to get into her background, which is a very interesting one, and has equipped her, almost uniquely for helping leaders to drive transformation and to manage and lead change with organizations and just the people who are all around us. I'm very excited about this. She's going to talk to us about the distinction between managing change and leading it, and why it can be a real challenge if you don't have both, and what that distinction really means to people. We're going to look at change when it feels threatening, when it feels inconvenient, or maybe when it just feels just too exhausting. And we'll get a little bit of a look at the mindset required for change leadership as well. Just before we get into it, I do want to ask listeners, if you're interested in change or transformation or hearing from Jennifer again, we'd love for you to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to Wired for Change. All right, so let's introduce Jennifer. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thanks again so much for coming and joining us today.
Well, thank you, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about your background. You've worked for some pretty big brands. Tell us about some of that origin story that you have, and what keeps you going, and what's so interesting for you about change.
Well, my origin story is that I became an accidental change manager when I was working in IT. I didn't plan to be, never had the title, but I had studied, interestingly, very, very large scale change and influence in graduate school, but there wasn't much to do with it after graduation. And I wound up working in training. And eventually, because I'd studied some coding in college, I wound up in IT training. And, I was brand new. And in the second week on the roll, and my boss said, hey, up on 27, they said they need a training program for the engineers. So, my friend who'd also been hired and we pressed the button, went up in the elevator, and got off and sat down to meet with the gentleman who had asked for a training program. And he said, yeah, they're not adopting this tool that we've put out there that they're all required to adopt. This was a huge company. This was many engineers. And, it was pretty hit or miss in terms of who was using this tool. And so he wanted a training program. Obviously, they needed some training. And I said, okay, great. Now, Amy, you and I both know training really only solves one problem, right? It makes you better at doing something to a higher standard, or if you can't do it at all, it makes it so that you can do it to a minimal standard. That's what training does. And so we, sat there with our sharpened pencils and our notebooks, and we were ready to take our notes. What are the steps in the process that they will need to master? It was 3 steps.
3 whole steps.
3 whole steps for
Okay.
engineers.
Okay.
So, having now worked in training for about 5 years, I had a moment of panic going, you don't need a training program. I'm brand new here. I've never worked in this company. I'm pretty young compared to these people, and my first project is going to have no impact. Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little nerve-wracking. So I kind of went back into that stuff I had studied in graduate school. Why do people choose to do certain things for one leader but not for another? Right? Why? What is the system? What does systemic change look like? And how do you influence that? What levers do you pull? What's going on? So I started asking, well, why do you think they're not using it? It's a pretty simple process. And absolutely, we can do a little job aid for you, a reference document, kind of like the ones that they have at Starbucks for the baristas that'll sit there next to their monitor. It's a small process. That's all we're going to need for training. But, I'm a little concerned they're not adopting this when it is so easy compared to anything else that they do as engineers.
That's so
And
funny. It's
so,
it's it's kind
yeah,
of like that whole like, well, it must be because they don't know how.
right.
Right? Okay.
Logically.
Why wouldn't they do it?
Okay,
Okay.
we can solve that problem for you. We can make it so they all know how. That, yeah, I can have that problem solved tomorrow. That we got you, right? But I
Mhm.
am concerned that they're still not going to adopt it. And so he just kind of opened up as we were asking questions and asking follow-up questions and being really careful to not interrogate him. I'm thinking he probably feels really silly. People
Mhm.
aren't adopting this thing. It's a three-step process. So just kind of pursuing why are they not adopting it. So then we said,
Mhm.
well, can we talk to a few of the engineers who have adopted it, get their perspective? How about to a few who haven't adopted it, get their perspective? And so we came to understand what you might think of as a force field analysis of what was what were those the forces that were encouraging them to do it, and what were those forces that were discouraging them to do it. And we wound up building a very different type of program and set of support materials for him, for the leaders. We had some conversations with the leaders about things like, you're letting some of your most critical talents not do this because they don't want to, because it requires them to give up some control. And so as long as you let your favorites not do it, we can put the training in front of them, but others are not going to do it. And so
Mhm.
trying to just gently have some of those conversations was actually exponentially more interesting than
Mhm.
creating the 3-step reference document. And so finally, I have found some place where I can finally use that graduate degree that seemed so esoteric at the time. The world has caught up with what my professors were talking about. And
Great.
so that's how I got into it. So I increasingly moved into the organizational development space where you're looking at systems and you're using systems thinking to look at what's going on and understand where you're really going to have impact in an organization and what looks like it's big impact that actually isn't going to get you too much further toward your goal or your standard, whatever that might be. And so as I was moving more and more into that, executive coaching was just starting to form. I say we were inventing it as we were doing it.
Mhm.
Um, and it became something that was pretty somewhat standardized, often offered through a central HR function so that it could be the same across the whole org. And I thought, well, I think that's what I want to do because all this change stuff is exhausting. It's killing me, right?
It
But
is,
guess
yeah.
what? Clients kept coming to me when they had a huge remit around change. And it was the technology leaders more than
Mhm.
any others with my IT background. It was also business leaders.
Mhm.
HR wasn't terribly interested.
That's funny.
So I think one of the greatest gifts for me is that, in fact, HR was never all that terribly interested in me unless it was an HR business partner who was joined
Mhm.
at the hip with their
Mhm.
senior business leader because they were going, now I need someone in here working with them on their specific situation. It's not about their general leadership effectiveness. It's about a colossal remit around change that is business critical, and it has got to happen, and it's got to happen better than it's
Mhm.
happening now. And
Absolutely,
so
and
that's
so many examples of that today,
so,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
many things to learn from.
Yes,
Sorry, I
yes.
interrupted.
Yeah. No, it's just that's how the practice, evolved to what it is today. And interestingly, leading change, managing change, it was all kind of mushed together. It wasn't really
Mhm.
it was, I mean, change management was barely a thing at that point. That was forming too, but about 15 years ago, change management, I think, really got shaped up. And for all of the listeners who are saying, oh, well, our change management sucks, it's terrible, we could be
Mhm.
so much better. I mean, I would just urge you to consider that, yes, it can always be better. Yes, we can always get better at change management, 100%. But it might not be quite as bad as you think. Management is a comfort zone, a confident space for many, many of the clients who come in to work with us. And so, that thing that you're good at and that you're comfortable with, of course, you're going to see everything where you kind of suck at it. and where you could
Mm.
do better. But I actually think change management as a profession, as a practice, as a process has come a very long way and will continue to grow and will continue to get better. What I continue to notice falls far behind that is change leadership. We really don't put enough attention to developing that, the human element.
Okay, so let's step back then and look at the
Yeah,
landscape a little bit
yeah,
and
yeah,
define that maybe for
yeah, yeah,
our audience.
yeah,
What
yeah.
is the difference?
Yeah. So to me, change management is about excelling at the technical and process element, building a roadmap,
Hmm.
deciding on the new strategy, deciding on the new processes, deciding on the new platforms, making those choices, right? Planning and executing your timing for the change, the transformation, multiple changes and transformations. It's a complex management task.
Okay.
Defining when you will deliver new systems, new features,
Hmm.
ensuring that new responsibilities are now completed to a standard and
Hmm.
not just done. That is the management of change. You have to do that extremely well. Um, there's a little sort of noise starting to form out there where people are sort of dismissive of that. Oh, that's just table stakes. And I'm like, no, people, that is really hard. And
Hmm.
so please do not be dismissive of change management. It is hard and you really do have to do it well. But I would argue there's a lot more resources today to help you improve in that space. And because a lot of our incoming clients are excellent at management, they manage large and complex business functions.
Hmm.
I have great faith that they're going to continue improving their change management. It's a
Okay.
done deal, right?
Okay. All right.
So so change leadership is about excelling at the human element. This is things like keeping everyone, you know, focused and productive while they're building new skills, they're building new relationships.
Hmm.
Right? They're going through a lot of that, keeping them just generally focused and hopeful for the future. Change is hard.
Hmm.
And you go through some rough spots, right? It's a kind of an emotional up and down. It's not like, oh, now we're in the valley and soon we'll be at the top of the hill, because you know what? Another valley's coming. And
Hmm.
so keeping them hopeful through this, right?
I guess
Building and yeah,
especially when things kind of don't go as expected, right?
yes,
In terms of an example of what, that change leadership might look like.
yes,
Things don't go as well as
yeah,
expected. What do we
yeah,
do now? How do we think
yeah.
about this, right?
Right, we
Okay.
missed, right? We missed, we overshot. We thought we could do more than we could. It could be extremely discouraging, those setbacks, but maintaining that hope for the future.
Hmm.
Building and maintaining trust and alignment across multiple stakeholders.
Hmm.
If you are leading digital transformation, right? If you are leading something that cuts across the enterprise, this is exponentially more challenging, right? You've really got to connect people who maybe never wanted to be all that connected. They were pretty happy being not so closely connected. Building those bridges cross functionally, right? A
Hmm.
human element there. And of course, successfully addressing, massive conflict, reluctance, resistance.
Hmm.
This is the human element of change. And, as I mentioned, I want to just look at the data because I want to make sure I get my numbers exactly right for
Hmm.
your listeners.
Sure.
Um, one of the most recent and I think most comprehensive, most academically rigorous studies that was done was published 2 years by 2 years ago by Oxford University and sponsored by Ernst and Young. So certainly Ernst and Young wants to get into that space. They've got some skin in the game. So I dug under the hood and
Hmm.
made sure, no, this is a well done, rigorous study, right? This isn't
Hmm.
just a
Okay.
promo for a firm. That sort of fake research that you see out there. It's the real deal.
Oh,
It's
that
the
never
real deal.
happens.
Never. And in this
All
case, it
right.
certainly did not. So
Okay.
the data that they found globally and across industries, nobody's special, nobody's unique in this, right? Across the world, across industries, um, organizations that put humans at the center of their transformation journey, I'm quoting, are 2.6 times more likely to succeed. Now, that doesn't sound like such a big deal if it's 1% chance versus 2.6% chance, but how the numbers actually play out.
That's funny though. It's like, yes, we have
Yeah,
1%
no,
chance of
right.
succeeding.
Yeah, and now it's 2.6. We put humans at the center. No. It's not what it looks like. 28% chance of success if you don't put humans at the center, 73% chance of success if you do.
Okay.
That's a big
Good.
difference.
It is a big
That's a
difference,
difference.
particularly when you
Yeah.
look at the success fail rates that there are for
Oh,
transformation
they're
today, right?
still huge. How many
Yeah.
years ago did
Hmm.
Cotter do his seminal work
Oh,
on
absolutely.
75% of transformations were failing? Not a lot better today. A little better, but not a lot.
And for
Not a
some
lot.
reason, some of that human-centered work that,
Yeah.
ideally would take place, just it feels like it takes too long for a lot of organizations, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it does. I always say, if you're working with me as your coach, the time that you spend with me specifically and the time that you spend doing the daily homework that you commit to will be less than any project that you're doing. This will literally be the smallest project you do in terms of time, but it will be the single biggest project in terms of emotional energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as such, it's going to feel like it is taking a lot of time. It absolutely will feel that way. But another little, interesting, not so fun fact, leaders,
Mm-hmm.
when a transformation is successful, leaders rank leadership as the number one driver. It's because of us. It's because of us.
That's funny.
Now, leaders rank leadership only number 10 as the contribution if the transformation underperforms.
Of
Oh,
course.
yeah. There were 9 other things that really contributed more. Uh, guess what workers rank leadership as when transformation underperforms?
Oh, tell us.
Number 1. They know. They know.
They
Whether
know.
we want to face it or not as leaders, they know.
That's so interesting. I really like that.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, it does take some time. It certainly takes emotional energy, but I'm making the case here the return is worth the investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's one very broad kind of it's a great
Yeah.
data point where,
Yeah.
leadership, that change leadership really does make a difference
Yeah. Yeah.
for a
Huge.
project.
Huge.
Do you have a more specific example you might be able to share with us
Oh
in
my
where sort
goodness.
of that lack of change leadership or has really impacted a
Yeah.
transformation?
Well, so many. I think about something as simple, what seems to be simple and barely at the level of transformation, is when I was asked to work with a leader. I'd worked with him before. He asked me to come back in this time because he was taking over a very large engineering function that included product marketing, and it had been formed through an acquisition that was then integrated, aka failed integration, into another existing group. So what he walked into was he essentially had 2 separate leadership teams. They were not aligned. Workers all the way down were getting conflicting direction. They were 15 months behind on delivery. It
Mm-hmm.
was so bad, Amy, that they actually had developed an entire next generation and they had to scrap it because it
Wow.
took so long. Now they were behind what
Right.
the new hardware could do.
Just didn't make sense anymore. Yeah.
They wasted 15 months of everyone's lives on
Wow.
something that, and you know how hard engineers work. These
Yeah.
were not people just kicking back and putting in a few hours a day. I mean, this was so the organization was phenomenally discouraged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenally discouraged. And he recognized that, sure, we can probably improve how we manage the change, but I think these people are all pretty good managers. So if we just kind of put our mind to that and we focus our attention, we're going to do better at that. But that focus on the change leadership became the big one. In this case, change leadership does not always just mean one leader. It means
Mm-hmm.
the leadership team as individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and it means the leadership team as a team.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So, that's a really nice segue to talking about sort of
yeah,
transformation as a team sport,
yeah,
which is something I know
yeah.
you talk about and you're
Yes,
very big on.
yes.
So,
Very big.
um, let's see, like one quote that I have from you is that you won't transform a single thing if your leadership team is waiting for your orders. Now it's such a powerful,
Yeah.
thought, because,
Yeah.
transformation takes a lot of orchestration and there's a lot of
Yes.
complexity and not everybody
Yes.
is always gonna know everything all the time. So
Yeah.
sometimes, people do need to sort of think about, well, what is the direction that they've been,
Yes.
given, but maybe not
Yes.
always. So,
Yeah.
what keeps leadership teams in a mode where they're overly passive, maybe? Maybe you can talk about this
Yeah.
a little.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there are several contributors to that, and a little reflection on which of those might be contributors in your case can help you start to break through that a little bit. Obviously, the first and foremost, it's past experience. It has indicated that it's really, if I go back to sort of that good old force field analysis, they've maybe taken a chance on trying to step up more and not wait for your orders, but you actually kind of smacked them back down
Mhm.
and you didn't realize you did it.
Mhm.
Right? Many of us think we are more empowering than we really are. Right. And so, and not really getting the feedback. So, I would ask, ask you to ask yourself and ask the people who work for you, like, when's the last time that you got feedback on how effectively you are truly letting go of things and ensuring that the capable people are able to take them, right? To take those decision points themselves, to get out there and make those decisions. And the old ask for forgiveness is not quite right in transformation, because if you make a bad call, you can really screw things up for a lot of people. So I don't think it's so much about asking for forgiveness, but to me, it's the difference between that leader who goes to the senior most leader and says, look, this is the direction I'm going. I think I'm in a position to make this decision. I'm doing it unless you tell me not to.
Mhm. Mhm.
What are you doing to encourage your people to do that? What are they doing to encourage their people to do that? Not everyone, right? Not everybody wants that additional scope of responsibility and
Mhm.
accountability, especially in something as scary as transformation and large scale change. But you do have those who do, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, really getting that feedback. What decisions are you ready to make that I'm still making? Tell me,
Mhm.
be blunt, right?
Mhm.
Hit me with it. Or be diplomatic, but please just tell me. Let me know. Let me know. So recent past experience can be part of it. Sometimes if we dig a little deeper, we'll learn it's not so recent past experience. You come out of, say, oh, I've had a number of clients who came out of highly regulated industries like banking and insurance, and went into, say, tech, Wild
Okay.
West, totally almost entirely unregulated, right? Beyond your basic financial regulations. And so, for them, they were very accustomed to, oh, no, 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 you're violating a policy that is aligned with a law if you decide to empower yourself and go off and make this decision and make this change without getting all of the approvals and all of this. And so a shift into a less regulated, or more open, burbling, changing, fast changing environment can be a situation in which those leaders they're waiting for the orders and they haven't quite caught up with the reality that those orders aren't coming. They're just not coming. All right. This is a very different environment. And it's one thing to hear that in your interview and go, oh, that sounds good to me. I'm tired of getting 36 signatures. And then when you get into it, you're like, whoa, crap, what do I
Mhm.
do? You know?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this is where I think really, you got to spend some time with each of those directs as a senior leader, to understand why they're not doing what they're doing and what can you do together, to move that along. Now, if what you need them to do is collaborate more, that's a whole topic in and of itself. Um, but I will say, well worth the investment, which will be significant, right? If VPA is saying, well, I'm not doing this because I need all of the data from VPB and they won't release it. And
Mhm.
VPB is
Mhm.
saying, I'm not releasing that data because they got a ding dong over there in that group and I don't trust them. Right. And that other one I don't like either because I just don't trust them. So when you've got that sort of stuff going on, you've got to get that team together and you've got to get them to work through conflict and you've got to get them aligned. A
Mhm.
good little truth serum is, when you think of the phrase my team, what's the team that comes to mind? If it is the team that reports to you, I have bad news for you. That's not the team that should first come to mind. It should be the team that's your peers. That's my
Hmm.
team. That's the team I'm on. And people go, whoa, no way, no way. We're supposed to be there to fight and advocate for our teams. I'm like, well, what happens if you're not one team and you don't move as one? What happens to them? They're like, oh, misalignment in the direction that they get.
Yes. Yes, and it becomes more
And
challenging for everyone,
you,
everyone's teams,
everyone,
all of your peers. Yeah, yeah,
everyone, you're
absolutely.
actually, while charging ahead in your self righteousness, you're actually blockading your own change that you're trying to implement. You don't know it. And this is why I say, one of the four things that makes a leader influential is this highly self aware thinking.
Okay.
They get out of their own way. They get out of their own way. It takes a lot of work to develop it, but worth it.
So I think what you're saying is that it's really important to envision what you need from your team that is your peers,
Yes.
and then your team
Yes.
who is your direct
Yeah.
reports, and then
Yeah.
other sort of informal kind of team members that you may have across the
Yes. Yeah.
organization. And
Yes.
so what would you say makes it different during change and transformation as opposed to other kind of more normal, quote unquote, times? What is it about change and transformation that, heightens this need to really look at sort of your own behaviors and how you
Mm-hmm,
relate
mm-hmm.
to your team and
Yeah.
in a change leadership capacity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really great question. Um, because you could argue that you have to be good at that for day-to-day operations.
Hmm.
And I would say, I agree, you do. Um, I think you have to be that much better at it in
Hmm.
leading change because of the way our brains are structured. We were making kind of guesses at a lot of this stuff over the years based on observation. A lot of our guesses were pretty spot on. We now really have neuroscience. We've got people hooked up to the monitors, and you're seeing how their brains react to the introduction of change. And the brain reacts with initially with a little bit of fear and protection, right?
Hmm.
Fundamentally your brain kind of comes down to fear and love, right? And so that change is like, is this going to be something that I am safe to love, or is this going to be something that's going to devour me?
Hmm.
And so that reaction, you're going to be, as a leader, you're going to be triggering that much, much, much more often.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
other sort of underlying assumption in the question, which I asked and answered for many years, that now I'm actually starting to question is, do we have any leaders left who are not leading change?
Hmm. Okay.
Some have
I don't
huge
know.
remits around it, others
Right.
have smaller remits. Is there anybody left who
Hmm.
is literally strictly day to day operations with
Hmm.
no change that they need to lead?
Yeah, I don't know. I dream about those organizations sometimes. I think it's like, what would it be like? When I'm
Yeah.
deep in a transformation, what would it be like to have a job where nothing's changing and everything's kind of the
Yeah.
same as it was yesterday? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And so
But
I am really
yeah.
beginning to question with the complexity of change, the number of changes. Admittedly, in some organizations, probably way too many, way too disorganized. That's a very senior leadership issue, right? But generally, even in organizations that are thoughtful about change, all the way down to your frontline manager,
Mhm.
aren't they leading their very small team through the changes that they're impacted by day in and day out in their work?
Mhm.
Changes
Mhm.
who they have to collaborate with cross functionally, perhaps, even if that's the only
Absolutely.
change. Perhaps it changes some of their responsibilities or tasks. Perhaps, with AI, may eliminate some of their friends' jobs.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we know that people who have at least one friend at work are higher performing than people who have no friends at work. We've known this a long time.
Yes,
And
that's
so,
true.
what if your layoffs take away all their friends? Right?
Hmm.
Even if you're a manager of four people, it's your first manager role. If you take away their friends, you've got to change to manage because now you've put them into that very human experience of going through the cycles of change, which I really still, I've used a lot. of models of the personal change cycle, many, many, many over the years. Dug deep into a lot of them. I still love Bill Bridges the best. So there's fundamentally three stages that you go through in a change personally. I'm not talking about the org and how you're coordinating, but for each individual in it, loss. When I
Mhm.
talked about that first thing that goes fear, loss. I'm losing something I had yesterday.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sad about it, right? Loss is a very quiet stage. As a leader, you really kind of have to pay attention to see if someone's in loss, so you can help them move through it.
Mhm.
Because it's so quiet, you might not know unless you're really, really paying close attention. And then that's followed by the transformation journey stage, right? This is the one he describes it beautifully, where this is where you and your people or an individual, you have set ship, you have set sail in your ship. You look back, you cannot see the shore anymore.
Right.
You cannot see the other shore. All you see is water. You can't
Mhm.
see the destination. All you can do is kind of turn to that leader and hope that their description of the destination is what it's going to be, and that you have the confidence that they're going to be able to steer you to it. And then the last stage is an actual, what we would today call integration, right? It's
Okay.
when the change is no longer a change for the individual. It is now their sort of, to them, their normal way of being as other changes are coming along. Right? So I think, is there any leader, however junior, who's not leading someone through it? Even I'm thinking like chief architects. Senior
Mhm.
architects often have no direct reports.
Mhm.
They're influencing so many people, and they are always at the heart of change. They're always at the tip of
Yep.
change. They're the ones seeing the big picture and piecing it all together. Um,
Okay.
Even
So
they may have no team, but they
it's
need
true.
to lead others,
They do.
right?
They do,
They do.
absolutely.
People will look to them as truth tellers, even if they're
S
not their boss.
So we've established that there's change happening everywhere and that there are many
Yeah.
people in the organization that need to be able to lead
Yes.
change. There is
Yes.
and you've described sort of three kind of stages that can apply
Yeah.
to many changes. So
Hmm.
let's put ourselves at the beginning of that kind of a
Yeah.
change and you need to
Yeah.
build up your bench strength in terms of
Yes.
moving through that change. What are a couple of
Yeah.
practical steps that you can take, from a leadership perspective to try to build those the skills or talents or aptitudes
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
readiness for some of that change or
Yeah.
behaviors that you
Yeah.
you might suggest?
So certainly on the when I'm looking at that from the human centric side, again, not that if they're a little weak in change management, please improve their change management skills.
Okay.
Please do, right?
Okay.
Very important. Don't assume that they've got that nailed. If they're nervous about that, pay attention to that. Get them that support, that training, that development, that mentoring from those who do it well. I think you're going to need to develop their change resilience, their ability
Mhm.
to understand those personal stages of change, to recognize when they're in them, to recognize when someone else is in them, to know what to do to help yourself and others along through the stages. We often do things that are so wrong, and we're just trying to help. Right? Like
Mhm.
when someone's in loss and you're like cheerleading for the many benefits of the change. And it's like, that is not the moment for that.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's just going to be better, better, better,
Yeah.
better. People become pretty cynical and eye rolling when, they're always hearing their leaders go, but better, and you're like, I'm having a moment now, leader, go away. You don't want to be the leader that's like, but better, right? So there is actually a time to do the pump up conversation, but it's not if someone is deep in loss. And so being able to recognize that, being able to know what to do and what not to do in those moments, being able to recognize it in yourself first, to hear that inner dialogue,
Mhm.
and to help yourself through change. The old
Mhm.
classic, put on your own vest before and the air mask before those around
Yes.
you. There are certainly, there's going to be a need for leaders, particularly of digital transformation, to be able to be more influential because you are cutting across the enterprise. And
Mhm.
so, in terms of bumping up their change, their influence skills to help them in change,
Oh, I like that.
are
Mhm.
are they good storytellers or are they not great storytellers? One of the first things I look for is, nearly every story is some variation on what's called the hero's journey. I think
Mhm.
an old movie, but almost perfect portrayal of the hero's journey is the first Star Wars movie. And the hero of that journey is who? Luke Skywalker. All right.
Mm-hmm.
In that story, there are two guides by his side. There are allies who he meets along the way. One is Princess Leia and one is Han Solo. So often in telling our stories, if we're technical, is we're making ourselves Luke Skywalker. Or if we're trying to be more human centric, we're making the people who work for us Luke Skywalker. And it's like
Right.
you're talking to a stakeholder. The stakeholder needs to be Luke Skywalker. It needs to be from their point of view. They're the hero, right? How are they the hero? How are you, as a technology leader, going to be their Han Solo or their Princess Leia that is that vital partner that gets them to the victory, right? To the finish line. And so I listen for things like that. I actually finally wound up developing a workshop in storytelling because I was trying to find help a client find one. I'm like, I'm not going to teach you this. There have to be a million classes out there, right? This can't. Then they got to be cheap. They can't. They're so hard to find for people who are internal and leading transformation. It's all like I had taught entrepreneurs how to tell a story to pitch, but I'm like, that one doesn't work for you. Like that's for them
Mm-hmm.
pitching VCs.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept finding things like for salespeople selling product. We found things for, senior executives writing your story for analysts. But good grief, so many people are out there leading transformation internally and they're nothing. So I was like, fine, I'm creating the workshop. I can't
That
take this
is
anymore.
100% one of the most important things and most impactful things a
Yeah.
change leader can do
Yeah. Yeah.
is that storytelling piece. So you have a workshop. That sounds
Yeah.
great. I'd love to
Yeah.
see that.
And for that client, we actually took that workshop all the way to their ICs. We said, you know what? All the things that you do, that you complain that you do 85% of the time, that you're above and you have all this, these skills that you never get to use, that's all going away within a year and a half because the technology will do it for you. Now
Mm-hmm.
you actually have to get business leaders to do what you advise them to do with all that data. And so that goes all the way down to the analyst. And even at that IC level, just being able for a business person to tell a story to, say, a model builder.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I need this thing to do. The stories are what we would call use cases. The stories it's very important to be able to tell them well, even a little story like that. So
Mm-hmm.
clear, crisp storytelling, powerful
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. If you want your leaders to lead change better, they have to lead with active listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Active listening starts with empathy, really hard, really
Mm-hmm.
hard. We all seem to think we're more empathetic than we really are. All you have to do is ask the people you think you're being empathetic toward, and they can probably give you a few examples, right? Well, now that you ask, so that active listening leads with empathy and
Mm-hmm.
really connects. It does not think about what's my answer going to be while this person's talking, does not stray, paraphrases, ask, did I get it right? There is just a colossal practice involved in active listening. If you want to align people, if you want to influence, if you want to be able to drive that transformation, it's not really driving, is it?
No, no.
Not necessarily. And even this whole old metaphor we used to use about you're driving the bus, you want them to get on the bus. Usually transformation has multiple leaders, right? You're aligning with each other and not a single
Mm-hmm.
one of you is in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the CEO, but the CEO can't drive every single large transformation themselves. So that active listening with others, really connecting, self-aware thinking, right? We all get in our own way, right? We all tell stories about what's happening in our own mind. The story is interpreting. It's sometimes right, it's sometimes wrong, because change does hit that threat neural network.
Mm-hmm.
The stories we're telling are often wrong. And so
Mm-hmm.
self-aware thinking is about being able to recognize, wait, I'm telling a story here. I need to open up to what's really right in front of me. Figure out if this is threat or something that is as a golden nugget, and really work from that more centered place so that you're always calm, cool, centered, no matter what craziness is going on in the room, no matter what ego has shown up.
Mhm.
No matter how much somebody's losing it, that you can always be that leader that others want to follow because you're so grounded, right? You're so grounded. They can trust you. They can count on you to be strong because you're grounded, right? Because you faced your vulnerabilities.
And so I want to get into the mindset side of things in just a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah, let's do
But just
it.
before we do that, thanks for capturing some of those, great skills like the empathy and the storytelling and the active listening and the self awareness
Yeah.
that goes along with it. Those are all very human sort of
Yes.
things that we need to
Yeah.
be able to do. Now, it's hard to have a discussion without asking how AI kind of fits into things,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
So in terms
Yeah.
of, change leadership and maybe change management to an extent,
Yeah.
what part of this is going to be supported by AI
Yeah.
and how much of this do we
Yeah.
really need to focus on in terms
Yeah.
of just our human skills, do you
It's
think?
a great question. I think none of us knows the answer at this point, but if I were to pull out my crystal ball, I think that we are going to see quite a bit of help from AI on the change management side. Um, there is a lot of logic in change management, and AI does logic very well.
Mhm.
It hallucinates, it gets a lot of facts wrong. Now, I'm
Sure.
not. Please don't like write in and tell Amy how could you have someone on here who says just lean on AI for your logic. I'm not saying that, but it's getting better and it's getting better fast, really,
Mhm.
really fast. So I'm talking months before
Mhm.
this starts to be able to really help us with the change management side. Um, Excelling at the human element, the little fuzzier, I think that's further out. So if you look at that change leadership side, might um, might your agent be able to that seems a little creepy to me, but might your agent be able to monitor your nonverbals and
Right.
say,
Oh,
Amy,
okay.
you seem to be conveying, a condescending attitude toward the other person, right? Um, Possibly try centering yourself and focus on a tactile experience for a moment so that you can get grounded. Possibly. I mean, these are and interestingly, like these are the things that we teach people to be able to do for themselves in our
Right.
coaching practice. So you
Mhm.
don't have to lean on the agent so much to tell you what to do when because there's an emotion in the room and you need to get more human centered or whatever that might be. So as coaches we teach them how to do that is themselves. Is there some sort of supplement that helps them out along the way as they're working on it? Maybe I find that, it's going to sound awful, but a little pain helps us grow a lot. So the pain of practicing it every single day, 5 days a week,
Mhm.
at this point is still the best way to get better at it. Um,
Mm.
so I that one is a little fuzzier for me. AI I don't think can help you very much with that right now.
Mhm.
There are a couple of companies really experimenting with that all in.
Mhm.
Um, it's a little creepy to me. It's like I'm not sure I want the agent monitoring all of my nonverbals. I think I want to have a little bit of the painful journey myself, right?
Yeah, you're okay with
Um,
that.
I'm okay with that. I want my brain to have to work because if your
Yeah.
brain works, it develops the neural networks.
Right.
And when
Right.
it comes to the human relationship, the development of the neural network is vital. It's
Mhm. Mhm.
absolutely vital.
Mhm.
And interestingly, even if AI is doing more for you on the human side at work, hypothetically, a few years out, what about the rest of your life? It's got nothing to do with change leadership. But as our clients start rewiring their brains, they report back to us, do you know this past weekend I used this at home with my teenager? It changed everything. I stopped telling myself this story about my kid. I stopped blaming the situation.
Mhm.
I centered myself with a tactile exercise. I opened up and used the active listening technique. And my teen, I don't know that I got totally through, but we actually had a connection, right? And
Nice.
so, those human skills will still be necessary in our lives. Where I don't know, maybe in 5 years you'll see our practice expand to, you know, um, personal sort of coaching that's on the
Right.
personal side. I've kind of shied away from that because I love the complexity of business, right? I love
Yes.
the complexity of you got thousands of people, they want to go in different directions. How do you make this very complicated thing happen when early on you yourself don't even know what it's going to look like?
No,
To me,
you
that
don't.
is a super cool, complex, complicated, tricky challenge. And so that's where we're happy now, and that's where we're going to stay. Yeah, that's where we're going to stay.
That sure is a challenge. And thanks for exploring that with me just for
Yeah.
fun.
I think it's a fast. I mean, I am reading up on AI as fast as I can. I'm
Of
all deep
course.
in Mary Meek, or I'm all deep in AI 2027.
Mhm.
I'm just burying myself in these forward thinkers to
Mhm.
get a sense. And I'm so fortunate because I do work with leaders of digital transformation.
Mhm.
They offer to talk with me about it.
That's
One
great.
actually sat down with my whole team, everyone, spent an hour of his time talking about the future of AI, where it is today, how fast it's moving, asking about use cases in coaching, and then actually thanked us for giving him a chance to think about such very different use cases. I mean, I am
Amazing.
so lucky,
That's
right?
great.
So lucky to be able
No.
to access such brilliant thinkers in this digital space. I am so, so, so lucky.
It's great to have
It's
lots of people to learn
wonderful.
from. We have to
Oh,
continue to learn for sure.
heavenly,
Now,
heavenly.
one situation, so just one more question on sort of the team and the organization and
Yeah,
bringing
yeah,
people along. Um, a common, I think, position that many, technology transformation leaders find themselves in is working with or trying to align business stakeholders
yeah,
who need to give something up,
yeah,
really, or finding
yeah,
themselves,
yeah,
disadvantaged or
yeah,
feeling lost, kind of thing.
yeah.
How do you extend, your change leadership, to them in a way that makes
Yes.
them the
Yeah,
hero and actually does that?
yeah,
Because it's such a
yeah.
common, I think, occurrence within
Huge
transformation.
challenge.
So,
Yeah, so
what kind of
common.
advice would
Yeah.
you provide for that?
As someone who's worked both on the technology side and the business side, I will say more often than not, two different languages. And
Hmm.
so when I think about empathy, I don't just think about it in terms of empathizing with their feelings,
Hmm.
which is frankly sometimes challenging enough as it is.
Sure. Yeah.
It's also really understanding their business, understanding their needs, their wants,
Hmm.
right? What would be in it for them personally if this change succeeded, if everything turned out the way you want? um, it's very difficult if you're not really investing the time to really understand their business, what they do, why they do it, how people come to do that, what challenges they face, way above and beyond the stuff that your transformation will touch. um, it's going to be very difficult for you to truly empathize, right? And it's going to be difficult for you objectively to find ways to meet them in your transformation, to make those adjustments in yours that actually would be helpful to them, to kind of negotiate your way through that. Secondly, to negotiate, you need trust, right?
Hmm.
And interesting, I haven't seen this explored much in the literature, but I really think trust boils down to personal trust and professional trust. Personal trust is, can I trust you to not stab me in the back? Professional trust is, can I trust that you have the competence to pull this thing off, right? To actually
Hmm.
do it, to execute it. And so, what are you doing to build that trust, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and often, I think, we come in from the technology side with kind of our dog and pony show. Like, we're talking a lot, which is ironic since it's a field filled with introverts. But, we're doing a lot of like explaining of our stuff, technology. And it's like, really, how many questions did you ask to understand their business, right?
Hmm.
To start with. Because you can't, how can you tell a story where they're the hero if you can't even envision what space looks like to them, if you can't envision what their Death Star looks like to them, if you don't know, I don't see how you can possibly make them the hero of the story.
It's true.
So you really, it's like, I'm sure someone's going, oh, great, she wants me to spend even more time on stuff that I'm not spending
Mhm.
time on now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I do. I really do. Um,
Yeah.
and all of us, and I can tell you, all of us, every one of us out there, is spending too much time on something right now.
Mm.
It's something that you're good at, it's something you enjoy. You're staying there because, well, makes you
Comfortable?
happy.
Yep.
Yeah, comfortable makes you happy. Good on you. But
Mhm.
that's probably where you can find the time.
Mhm.
Less time on that, more delegation and development of your team so they can do that, so that you can get out there. Now, the other piece, sort of strategically in this, of course, is, are you building individual trusting relationships only with your stakeholders, or are you building relationships with other people in their organizations?
Mhm.
You know, who
There's
is,
so many layers to this, right? So many
oh,
layers and
right,
such a mapping that
who,
you need to do. Yeah.
yes, yes. I actually sit down with clients and we do a relationship map.
Mhm. Makes
Is this
sense.
person, who are the decision makers? Who are the decision influencers? Who is everybody else? ABC.
Mhm. Mhm.
How strong is our relationship with each? One, two, three. And we
Mhm.
do a map, right? And we do a map. And then we look at, why are we spending so much time with this C person? They're
Yeah.
neither a decision maker nor influencer. They're an advocate. They like us. They used to be a decision maker, but now they've moved on to something else. We need a little boost. It's like, okay, but maybe a little less time with that person.
Right.
Who's the real pill in this group, right? Is the story you're telling yourself that this is this incredibly difficult decision maker. Okay, got it. You're missing something in how you're reaching that person. Who reports to that person?
Mhm. Mhm.
Of those people, who is your most likely person to at least be a little bit interested in connecting with you and building a relationship?
It's so interesting to me because it's so important to understand all of these things so that
Yes,
you can, be very aware of this over time. But, it's easy to assume, I think, that the inverse is also true when it's not.
yes,
So what I mean by that,
yes.
I guess, is that as a technology leader, I might have 8 different teams, right? I might have
Yeah,
someone answering phones
sure.
at the help
Oh,
desk. I
yeah,
might have someone in software design.
yeah,
I might have
yeah,
8 different teams.
yeah,
And I think, well, this team does this one thing and that team does that other thing to me, right?
yeah.
But to someone who's a stakeholder, when they have, when help desk answers their call, that's all digital or it's all
That's all
technology.
digital.
It's all
Yeah,
the same, right? So
absolutely.
if they don't have trust in that experience that they're getting
Yes,
from the help desk, why
yes.
should they trust that whoever is in this other team who is leading the transformation, who's going to change all their
Yeah,
devices and processes and all that? Why should they trust that that is going to be executed on over here?
right,
But inside,
right,
like you get lost
right.
in your own sort of
Yeah,
like land or your own
your
world
land.
of digital where
Yes,
everyone is different, and I
yes.
understand that all that
Yeah,
really well. They don't see that. They
yeah,
see like one
yeah,
experience, right? And that makes
yes.
such a difference
Yeah.
for the transformation that and the
Oh,
way that you communicate with them, and the trust that you're able
mm,
to build or that you
yeah,
need to build with them. It's kind of an
yes.
interesting
I
thing.
think you raised something so important that, in technology, we tend to not think of it as change or transformation, but that's because we're maybe looking at it through our own lens.
We are,
And
yes.
one of my longest standing clients, I've now worked with him for over 20 years.
Mhm.
Um, in his current role, when he went into the company, which was only 8 years, 7, 8 years ago now, they were still gathered around conference room tables doing conference calls. They weren't even doing video conferencing when, like, literally everybody else was doing video conferencing. Um, they had a policy of, everyone had to have only Dell laptops configured a certain way. So it was really outdated. And so he set a vision, which of course is vital to any change or transformation. He wanted IT to be a competitive advantage for the company. When he went out with that, he got exactly what he expected, which were these looks like, you what? And he would say, look, it is behind today, right? We are going to go from behind to best in the world, absolute top, for
Mhm.
all of these things that don't work the way you want them to work now. And
Mhm.
I get that we need to deliver on that first. I'm saying that for some of these more very not so well defined areas
Yep.
today, I'm still going to allocate some resources to that because I need seasoned senior people who are futurists and who think this way and who have delivered on similarly murky things that started out murky but were the future. I need those people so that we don't just become best in class at one thing only to be behind again. And so he steadily worked away at this steady drumbeat. And the first thing he did was like fix help desk, bring in video conferencing. And for a year, you'd get on a video conference in that company and I go, there are 3 cameras on. It took a long time to get, it's a technology company, right? And people go
Yep.
like, I have to be on camera. I don't have to be on camera, right? And so it took a lot. It took some time. It took some effort. But they are now absolutely, hands down, that's they're as far as people are concerned, that's done. That is done so well that they just keep refining it. Now they're introducing AI in very sophisticated ways, so that it makes it even better, right? And along the way now, they are leading digital transformation. Now, last fact, not a
Mhm.
fun or not so fun fact I saw, on who leads digital transformation in companies, and it's pretty much split 50-50 at this point.
Okay.
Only about half of companies have the person who was their CIO now as their CDO. And the
Okay.
other half have someone else who did not come out of IT at all.
Mhm.
And so for those folks in IT, I couldn't emphasize enough. It's like, yeah, do not sort of disassociate your stakeholders' experience of a help desk from their experience of your visionary architects who are sorting out what would be those best investments in AI with the business. They've got to build relationships with the visionaries and the business units, and you still got to get that help desk just
Yeah.
flawless,
Yeah, absolutely,
flawless,
absolutely, and to do that, I mean, in my
flawless.
roles, I think I've been fortunate because I've been set up in a way
Yeah.
that everything kind of digital IT, everything was kind of
Ah,
under me, so I could sort of see that and see the
yes,
tensions. I know that
nice.
it's not set up that way in every
Yeah,
organization, so that can be a bit
yeah,
more challenging.
yeah, for sure, for
But it is
sure.
a lot of pressure on whoever is
It
kind of
is
leading that to think about all those
extraordinary
different
pressure.
aspects of the experience.
Yeah,
And so now I want to
extraordinary
get to
pressure.
talk about
Yeah,
the mindset a little bit. And you've
yeah,
described it as kind of an
yeah,
athlete's kind of,
yeah, yeah,
mindset in
yeah,
terms of
yeah.
mastering that mental game.
Yes, yeah,
And sometimes you have to have that, keep that, you have to stay in
yeah.
the game for long periods of time because
Oh,
transformation, especially
long.
technology ones,
Yes,
and always longer than you want them to be.
always,
Right.
always,
So tell us,
always.
a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah,
about that how that looks like, in
yeah,
practice,
yeah.
mastering that mental
Yeah,
game.
yeah. It's so vital. The first person I learned this from was my first coach, who coached Olympic athletes who went from not getting gold medals to getting gold medals. So I hung on every word she said. I did every single thing she
Hmm.
taught me. By the way, I was not a world class athlete. I was just
I
fortunate
was
enough to be
thinking.
able to work with her. And so from day one, I incorporated a lot of sports psych, or what's now called performance psychology, into my work because it was
Hmm.
very clear to me leaders are like athletes, right? And when you look at that world class, that Olympic level athlete, this coach was very, very clear. She said they are all equally good athletically. When you see, the differences between them in terms of their physical skills are so minute as to be almost imperceptible. At that level, it is 100% the mental game.
Hmm.
I think that's
So
true for leaders.
fascinating.
I think that's true
Wow.
for leaders.
Huh,
The
that's so
big
interesting.
distinction, I think, for leaders is you don't train, run the race, rest. Right? Train, run the race, rest. You've got to keep it going continuously. And so some of this is about how do you work rest into your day. We work with some very specific exercises that are tactile,
Hmm.
because breaking the loop in your own mind of what you're thinking about by focusing on a tactile sensation is one way to get what Shirzad Shamin calls a mental command, like taking command of your mind back, right? Your mind is like,
Hmm.
okay, let's take command back. Let's take
Hmm.
command back. Another big piece of this, I talked about the stories we tell ourselves. Again, I give Dr. Shamin great credit for giving this some names such that I don't have to show people 16 diagrams of brain scans to explain what's going on in your brain. One of the neural networks that's very powerful, he nicknamed the judge. And
The
we
judge.
all have the judge. The
Okay.
judge and our other, what he calls saboteur neural networks, they develop when we are tiny little children because little children are helpless. And so their brains start to So come up with stories to help them feel safe. Like if you were 2 and you recognize that your parents are not infallible, terrifying because you're 100% dependent on your caregivers. And so the brain develops these, it's perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you need therapy or drugs or anything. We all have the judge in there. And so the judge likes to blame. The judge might blame self. Oh, if only I'd done better, right? Blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah.
Mhm.
The judge loves to blame others. Well, if I didn't have to work with that ding dong over there in FP&A, I could have this totally in place by now. If only the CEO would just say, you have to do this. That's the judge, right?
Okay.
Blaming others. And my favorite is blaming the situation, because in technology, the one that we want to do all the time is blame the process. Well, if we just had a proper agile process, everything would be just fine.
Right. Yep.
Like, sure, do you need a proper agile process? I'm not going to argue with you over that one way or the other. I don't have an
Mhm.
opinion. But I tell you what, if you're going to sit there saying, I can't be effective until we have an agile process, yeah, it's not leadership, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Leadership is saying we can find a way. And
Mhm.
also, there's a gift in this. What's the gift? Are we going to learn something?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
why would that be important to us? Right?
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
coaching, we go pretty deep on this.
Okay.
I kept going down into the what's the gift and why is that a gift and why is that a gift with a client, and he just wouldn't go too deep with it. And he had said, I'm not comfortable talking about my feelings. I'm like, we're going to work on that too. I'm not saying you have to talk about your feelings with your team, but
Mhm.
you got to get in touch and understand what those are, or you will never win at the mental game. You won't, if you can't
Mhm.
recognize them, you can't get in command of them. They'll control
Mhm.
you. You won't control them. Right. So we're going down. And why would that be a gift in this difficult situation? And why that? And why that? And why that? And finally I said, you know what I think the gift is? Your wife just moved halfway around the world for you. That's a colossal sacrifice. Do you want to be like the best husband you can be for her and make it worth it? Gulp. Now you're getting at your big why.
Mm.
Now you're getting down to your big why. Why do you feel this way? Because I can guarantee you do not feel anger and frustration and fear because of agile or the lack of agile. Who cares? That is
Mhm.
not what's driving it. It's something else.
Mhm.
You must come to understand what you feel most strongly about. That you must understand what emotions you have up so that you can then get in control of those. You must understand the phenomenal gift in the situation through your own eyes, your own heart,
And so
not
that
necessarily from someone
unlocks
else.
that mindset for
Yeah,
people who are faced with
yeah,
that transformational pressure. And it could be something that
absolutely,
is, outside of the
absolutely.
immediate kind of win that they're trying to get.
Yeah,
It's that total kind of mindset that they need to be able to come to the table with.
yes. And we're needing to develop it to a far more advanced level, much faster, and a much stickier way today, because transformation is so complex and it's moving so fast.
Oh,
And
oh,
it's
oh,
never
that's
just a
perfect.
transformation.
That's perfect because
Yeah.
I always like to ask sort of, what's changing and what's staying the same.
Oh, yeah.
So you're saying that, people need to develop these skills much faster than they've ever had to do before. Maybe you could elaborate that on that a
Yeah.
little bit. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
why is that and what is
Yeah.
changing in the environment that's causing that?
Faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Faster. And to a deeper level. Um, I look at, like, when did we need to develop super fast before? And that would be situations where I would come into coach because we had someone who had 5 direct reports today, and within a month they were going to have 50, and within a year they were going to have 500. So those exceptional situations of colossal rapid scale, chaos of going from pre-IPO to post-IPO, chaos of scale, just because you had some phenomenal success. These are the situations in the past, but those were not frequent situations. I mean, they were in
Mhm.
Silicon Valley, and I guess that's why I got so much practice, but not for most people in most places. So, today, though, it kind of goes back to this idea: is there anybody who's not leading change anymore?
Mhm. Mhm.
I am beginning to wonder if there's anybody left who's not leading change. And as such, that's going to trigger what do they call it? The lizard brain, that
Mhm.
survival network, that judge that's telling all these stories, and keeping you from getting control over your emotions and your feelings, and being
Mhm.
that grounded, strong leader that
Mhm.
others want. It's just that it used to be certain situations
Mhm.
where you needed to learn it quickly, focus on it every day till you got good at it, get better, nail it. You know, it's just much more widespread now in terms
Okay.
of who needs to master it faster.
Mhm.
I don't think we really have the luxury of a lot of dabbling and a little of
Yeah.
this and a little of that, and oh, I'll get to a little. I'll read a blog about it, and then in
Yeah, I
another month,
know.
maybe I'll read, the first chapter of a book about it. I just don't think many people have that luxury anymore.
No, and I can certainly see why it would be helpful to have, a coach or someone to guide you and to think about what kind of practices and disciplines, just like an athlete, you would
Yeah.
need. It's funny what you're talking about before in terms of the tactile kind of activities. There are a
Yes.
couple of things that I did when I was deep in a transformation, and
Yeah.
so you know how like as a systems thinker, you're always connecting dots, right? And
And
it's like all day
yes.
long you're connecting dots and thinking about
Yes.
outcomes and behaviors.
Yes.
But it can be exhausting. Even if you love it, it can be
Yes.
exhausting, for a time.
Absolutely.
And so I used to go home and I used to connect actual dots, like a dot to dot, like
I love
one,
it.
two, three, four, because it was so linear. There were no decisions. There was
Yeah.
no questioning where that next
No.
dot was coming from. And I found it very therapeutic.
It's
But sometimes they
brilliant.
are
I
very simple
love
things,
that. I love
and
that.
that helped me. But
Yeah.
so
I love
there's
that.
there's so
Yeah.
much there. I really appreciate all the practices and thinking that you're
Oh,
sharing,
wonderful.
today, because I do think
My
that a lot of
pleasure.
people struggle with this, and
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
easy, and it can be
Yeah.
very isolating to work through
Yes.
transformation at many
Yes.
different levels or roles
Mm-hmm.
within that transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, any kind of parting advice, I guess, for people who are, for teams who are executing on transformation now.
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. There is much more to it. But
Hmm.
do take some time to reflect on your own, reflect together on some of the things that you learned in the podcast. Um, don't hesitate to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a note. I'm not going to charge you to chat with you on Zoom for 10 minutes about what's
Hmm.
going on. Like, really, I don't even get that mindset that's like hourly fee, hourly this, hourly that. It's like,
Hmm.
please reach out. Please ask those questions. Hit the Selby Group website. We have, I don't know, I've put up maybe 120 blogs on various
You've got some great
topics.
posts. Like there
Oh,
was
thank
one on
you.
like
Thank
managing
you.
up that I thought was great.
How to handle an ineffective boss
Yeah.
hilariously and perhaps concernedly. I put that up on LinkedIn back when they were encouraging people to post an actual like blog on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And that thing, a client of mine at LinkedIn who had a huge following reposted it. It wound up in the main news feed that so many people
Amazing.
saw. 45,000 people read that blog
Holy
within
crap.
like 3 days.
Amazing.
And even on
Amazing.
my own email list, I sent it out in email, and my assistant said, "You're not going to believe the open list. Like, there's people on here I've never seen." And so I took a glance, and I'm like, these are all senior executives who report to CEOs who I thought just canceled, didn't subscribe anymore. No, they
That's
were waiting for
funny.
that one thing, that it's just so funny how to
What does
handle
that
an
say about
ineffective
like
boss.
our CEOs and bosses out there
I mean,
today? Hmm.
oh, the other one that got a ton of interest from senior people was, I don't know if you've fallen out of favor with your boss. What are the signals? Hilarious.
I
That
can
one
imagine
got
that'd
like
be good.
huge opens from very senior people, right? And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
if these E-suite people are still trying to figure out, the signals from their CEO, it tells you this is
Yeah.
pretty universal, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
I just laughed so hard. I'm like, I'm not a big fan of sort of like alarmist headlines, but
Sure.
I that was kind of alarmist in a, I thought, restrained way. And still, they're like, I want to know, have I fallen out of favor with, hilarious.
I love it. I love it.
Hilarious. I guess
I
I'm gonna
think
be
that's
busy for
wonderful.
the rest of my career.
Yeah, I think so.
'Cause
I think so.
that was just too much. Yeah, too
Amazing.
funny.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so many nuggets.
A great
Lots of
pleasure.
things that that resonated with me,
I'm so glad.
and you know, happy to know you, Jennifer. Thanks for reaching out
Yeah.
and for being on Wired for Change. And I will be posting some your website link and some other information
Okay.
as well. And again, to my audience, really appreciate you joining us for this episode. And please do subscribe if you're interested in change and transformation. All
Mhm.
right. Thanks so much. This is Amy on Wired for Change.